Happy Wednesday night and welcome to Deep in the Plus. This is the show where we go deep into the Disney Plus catalog and we find a movie or a TV show, or in this case, a special, and we talk about it. And tonight we're going to finally be talking about EPCOT Becoming. And I was like, who do we know that has EPCOT ears and could be a part of this? And it's Desi. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I am good. This has been like a saga for us to make this happen. So I appreciate you doing it. I know there's inclement weather in the area, so thank you for doing this. But we talked about this. This was originally released. And I'll show it real quick. And by the way, this is going to be a watch along. So in a little bit, we'll tell everybody, kind of gear up and start your engines, and we'll have you guys watch from home. As we are watching, we'll talk about it, and it'll be fun. It's only about 44 minutes, so it'll be neat to do, and then we'll talk about our feelings at the end. But I'm gonna have to give a disclaimer at the beginning as well. So I love watching behind the scenes stuff. EPCOT Becoming, I was immediately thinking this is Nat Geo. This will be behind the scenes. It'll be great. We'll be able to see some of this stuff like you saw behind the attraction, the Imagineering story, some of that stuff. This is the stuff that I enjoy seeing. I also enjoy the parades, like the Christmas parade and those things that they televise, because they're kind of commercials. This thing is a straight up commercial.
Yes, for sure. And I felt like they took some liberties with the story of Epcot.
Oh, they did. They very much did. So again, I'm going to be rolling my eyes a little bit at this one. And, I worked at EPCOT, at old EPCOT. I'm very protective of the old school EPCOT. I love the old school EPCOT. While I realize it's not a museum and we need to move forward, I think we're all in the Disney community not 100% sure that we love the direction that EPCOT is becoming. And again, they kind of rip off Walt's words and they twist them here with the EPCOT will always be in a state of becoming. Because as you know, he wanted a city that was evolving all the time.
Right. An experimental prototype community of tomorrow, you might say.
Yes. Yeah, I like how you did that. Can we make that an acronym, and can we make some money off the logo? This is one of those things where EPCOT took 6 years to build. This retransformation took like 7 years. And yeah, COVID was in there. The other thing is they didn't talk a lot about the cancellation projects. I wanted to see like the truth, didn't you? Like,
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, if they talked about COVID.
We had some bumps in the road. We couldn't get everything done that we wanted to, but you know what? We pushed through and we did the best we could. That kind of story.
Yeah, it is an interesting take on how they did this. And so we will do, like I said, the watch-along version. So again, here it is for those of you who are looking for it. EPCOT, experience EPCOT for yourself. Imagineers are dedicated to transforming EPCOT for new generations. Okay. So again, I'm not hating on EPCOT in general, but there's going to be some. I think you'll have some thoughts as well.
Yeah.
So when we start this thing, and before we get to like where the starting point where I think we need to start, the first thing that this tells us, and again, it's a commercial in a lot of ways, is that this is paid content created for and in collaboration with Disney Experiences. Now, again, it originally aired on Nat Geo on April 29th, 2024. I don't think that date means anything, but it did. I thought it was going to air on Nat Geo and then immediately go to Disney Plus and Hulu. It didn't.
So
we
did
were
I.
ready. We were ready. We were ready to do it, and you and I swapped out something else at the time, and I don't remember what it was. But
Inside
we
Out
changed.
too?
No.
One.
we changed gears for that one, and then they were like, okay, the Disney Plus date is July 19th. I thought it was 17th. That's when we swapped out for Inside Out.
That's right. We've done this a couple times.
Right. We had it on the schedule twice. The first one, I thought it was going to, like, why such a big gap between when it dropped on Nat Geo to almost 3 months later dropping on Hulu. Like, what was so hot about this property that they couldn't?
I wish I knew.
I know. So it is again, they admit several times as you're watching that this is paid collaboration and blah blah blah. But that's not where I want to start. So where I want to start is right at the beginning, and there's a skip intro. So please, or skip recap. Don't do that because there's no recap. Like I don't know why, but there's a skip recap button. You can see it down there. Don't do that. Let's just start right here at the opening.
Let's start at the very beginning.
Let's start at the beginning. Exactly.
Seems like a very good place to start.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the first thing they talk about is the lights on Spaceship Earth, and they jump in this thing so much all over the place. And they talk about the lights on Spaceship Earth.
One story. They start telling a little bit of one story, and then they jump to a different one. But yeah, go ahead. They're starting with the points of light.
Well, the points of light, from the beginning, they look like those little pop lights you'd put in your closet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that they are all connected inside the building, I honestly am not sure I knew that they would be, because it feels like they could operate independently. And so they're showing us like there's like 2,000, and there's no trivia, by the way. I'm not going to hit you with trivia. There's like 2,000 feet or something like that of cabling inside of Spaceship Earth that they've done. And I feel like you've almost done Spaceship Earth dirty here by, like, you know, poking all these holes in it. But it seems to work. I like the lighting effect.
I like it.
I don't know if you do too.
No, I do.
And then they basically start talking about how they set out in 2016, which, again, I'm doing the math. It didn't really officially finish until June of 2024. Yeah. And again, I get it, COVID. But also, you had at least 3 other projects that you canceled in order to get this done. So we know they started around 2016, and right now they're just showing a bunch of like little snippets and clips of, here's what Luminous looks like, and here's what Guardians looks like. And they kind of focus on Luminous and Guardians and Moana. They don't talk about Harmonious at all.
Nope. Not even mentioned once. They say that the Symphony of Us, you know, follows a great track. I don't remember exactly what it was that they said, but it was something about how, you know, a long legacy of nighttime events. And I'm like, well, the last couple weren't that long.
Yeah. Well, but, you know, Harmonious was a disgrace for them. And again, that's one of those things where I feel like they should have talked about it.
No mention.
So EPCOT Forever was a filler while they got Harmonious ready. So I don't think we hate on that one too much, because it was not ever supposed to be a permanent show. Although a lot of people,
despite the name,
EPCOT Forever, exactly. A lot of people compared it directly after seeing the Illuminations for the last time. So there was a lot of hate going on with it. So they talk about the Imagineers. They're talking about Marty Sklar. They're talking about how Walt hired Marty, and that that then, you know, he was part of making the movie that we all know and love, where Uncle Walt introduces to us what his vision of Epcot will be.
And they glaze right over that. They glaze right over what the actual vision was.
Yeah, they do. But that's where they use his words against him. He always wanted it to be in a state of becoming.
They don't mention really the city at all. They just mention, look at how big this area is. And, you know, it's always going to be a showcase to the world of exciting technology.
Yeah.
Nothing about what it actually was. Oh, there he does spell it out.
There is there's a thing on, and I forget which channel it's on, maybe the History Channel, that's called How Disney Built America, and they do these sensationalized bits with this guy pretending to be Walt, and in it he talks about Epcot and how he was in a meeting about the World's Fair, the 64 World's Fair. He was in an office with a gentleman who had planned the city of New York, and he was like, that's what I want to do. And so everything that Walt wanted to do was to do this city, and he said how much space he was going to need. And in this dramatization, Roy, who's the money guy, says to him, if we're going to do this, we're going to put a Disneyland in it so that we can at least cover our costs. And Walt was like, fine, whatever it takes. So he didn't want another Disney park.
Right.
He wanted a community of tomorrow, as you've said. We didn't get it.
But they do not make that clear in this video. Yeah. They make it sound like this is exactly what Walt wanted the entire time.
Yep. And they talk about Marty being a pack rat, which I look at all this and go, I'm exactly this guy. Like Marty Sklar, like kept every and this is the artwork where he's saying we need to figure out how to take Walt's plan and make it a park. That's what that paperwork basically said, is we need to take Walt's plan and somehow cover our butts and make a park. Because the park's going to make money, but we do want to do something towards Walt's vision. And so, they show these newscasters, and he's like, the Walt's vision has finally come to life. Has it? I don't think so. But the original Epcot was, I thought, pretty amazing. And if you think about it, it's the second park. Like Tokyo Sea and the Walt Disney Studios Park, or Disney Wonder World, or whatever it's going to be called now, out in
Adventure
France.
World. No,
Adventure World. It's.
Maybe.
I think that's it. But it's stupid. It just doesn't work. But this was the second park. And so it was unlike anything else. And so I remember going to it and seeing it and being on all the attractions. And I didn't love it at first, but I grew to love it. The music and everything was different. And I don't know. It just was really neat to be able to see all that. In this, while we're watching this, they're talking about dividing up the worlds. Did this need to happen?
And the way they said it was like, we're making all new neighborhoods. I'm like, a lot of that, like the land and the sea, were already there. It doesn't seem like World Nature is a new area. It seems like it was already its own thing, and you're just giving it a new name.
And they couldn't shoehorn it in either, because like imagination meant nothing for nature. So as you see, like World Celebration leans to like encompass imagination because it wouldn't have fit into nature. It really probably would have fit more into Discovery, but then it would have crossed over nature. And so, yeah, it's a very loose fitting. But I mean, do you see it now as 3 different lands when you go?
No, when I go, I still call it Future World. I don't. It will probably take me as long to get over Future World as it did to get over MGM.
Okay, that's fair. I'm gonna like, hey kids, we're gonna shoot over to World Nature, and see. You don't do that. You don't say that.
No.
The only thing that makes it feel World Nature to me is the Moana attraction, because they've actually added flora and the whole bit, so that sort of feels that way. I will say that I feel like that is the best thing that they've done at New Epcot, and I'm not just saying that because you love Moana. I'm not just saying that.
I love it.
I know, but to me that's the best.
My kids love it too. Yeah, every time they walk by, they want to do it. I was watching this with them earlier, and when the Journey of Water came on, they're like, Journey of Water, I want to do that. Let's do that the next time we go to Epcot. They also saw some things from old Epcot. They're like, oh, when do we get to see that? Ooh, sorry. Yeah, no, you don't get to.
Womp, womp. And again, here, they talk a lot about Luminous, and I think part of the reason for that is that Luminous was one of the last pieces of the puzzle. It opened up on Walt's birthday. And that's the other thing, too. They kept mentioning, we got to get it done in time for Walt's birthday. That was not their original intent. Their original intent was for it to be done like on Epcot's birthday, which is October 1st, and they couldn't get the music right. And so they're like, oh, they're getting close, and they got to do all this. We got to get it done in time for Walt's birthday. It's like, yeah, because you missed at least one deadline before this. but it's
Yeah,
all in the spin.
they want they want you to believe that all of this is about Walt. This is all about Walt's original vision. This is exactly what he wanted. Um, we have the statue of him dreaming about Epcot, and now he's looking over, and how happy and proud he must be of what we have here. Um, and of course, we have to have his voice in Luminous. We have to have him saying "Welcome." This is all about Walt. Walt would just be so happy with all of this.
Yes, yes. No. When we get to Dreamer's Point, I have thoughts. But they show a lot again the recording sessions. So I'm really thinking it's because it was the timing of when the special was being made that they do show some stuff from Guardians being made. They do show some stuff from Moana Journey of Water being made, but they don't really show you a ton of that. And it's really
Right.
more about it. Like I said, and at the beginning, and you talked about it too. It's not really a story. They jumps around a bunch, and so they're like, "Hey, we're doing this new thing, and it's Guardians, and it's going to be great." But over here, we're working on this, and it made it seem like it was all happening like in a very short amount of time. Which again, it was 2017, fall of 2017, when they closed Universe of Energy. So by that point, they knew they were moving because Universe of Energy was closed, the same time as the great movie Ride RIP. So
Oh,
I know. So it's been like 2016 since they've been planning all this stuff. 2017 they start taking stuff down, and then 2018 there's like walls going up, and then 2019 we lose Illuminations, and then we get Epcot Forever because they're working towards Harmonious, and so Harmonious is coming. So they don't even talk about that, even though that was a big part of what was going on in this time. So yeah, I feel like I would have loved it for them to have admitted that thing. During
right.
this part, they're talking about we want these walls to come down as much as our guests do because we want to show off the things that we're doing, and I'm just like, they were up a
No,
long time.
I've seen the walls come down. Mm, I don't know
Not that
how
they should
well
have been
that
proud of it.
aged.
One of the things that they rolled out early on was the idea of opening up the front of the park and talking about there were a bunch of hurdles and things that kept you from coming in. So this was the artist rendering of what that was going to
There
look
are
like, and
some things in there that I'm like, oh, why didn't we get that? Like the seating areas with
yeah,
shade. That's not there,
yeah.
right? Am
No, I
I
think
like
they're
imagining
talking about
things?
other areas. Like this is Communicore Hall that they were showing there. Like there are other pieces, so I'm not really sure where those tables were supposed to be. We do have a lot of tables in the in the middle area there. But when they started talking about this section, they were talking about how they wanted to more windows so that you really can't tell the difference between inside and outside. And I
That
just
was a
all I
weird
could think of
statement.
at that point was the like the homogenization. I don't know if that's the proper word of Epcot, and
So
especially future world.
we want to be walking by and looking in the window and seeing people eating. That
Mm-hmm.
makes things feel better. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And you remember how Walt wanted a Wonders of Xandar pavilion? I think that
How
was one
this
of the things.
fits so well into
Yeah.
world discovery and teaching about, space and science and
And again, it's neat to think that they did a lot of research on the spinning and this the what do they call it, the yaw of the
yeah.
vehicles, and yet at the same
And
time they didn't anticipate people getting sick 50% of the time.
they were concerned about the yaws because she's like, oh yeah, if we don't get the yaws right and there's too much vibration, that's not going to be good for people. I'm like, oh, did you get those yaws right? Did you?
It
Um,
is pretty much go ahead.
it is interesting that they had to plan before they even poured the concrete where everything was going. So I did think that that was pretty interesting that they had to have basically the entire plan for everything down to like the last bracket planned
Yeah.
ahead of time before they even poured concrete and built that. I noticed they did not show the outside of the building. They did
Right.
not show the big blue box.
Well, one of the things they mention there is they mention the challenge of putting that much track in an enclosed space, and they had. I feel like they could have had as much space as they wanted to build the building.
Yeah.
So because they're building a building in the parking lot from scratch, they certainly could have gone bigger if they wanted to. So I don't know who was limiting them on that size. Right? Because they're like, oh, that's our biggest engineering challenge is to fit all this track in the building we just built on purpose.
Right. And now we don't know how to get all of the pieces in. So now we've got to use track to get the track in.
Right. Yes, they do talk about that. Here's the part where they're talking about the guy doing the statue of Walt. And again, all I can see is the whole like Walt sitting on a toilet situation.
I know, but this guy is super talented.
Oh,
I
it's
wish that I had
beautiful.
that kind of talent.
It's eerie. Yeah. It is. It's really eerie. Like the strong attention to that. And I thought this was an interesting tidbit. This is what I watch these for, is to say, hey, if we built him at his original size, he would look small. So he's really larger than life. They built him as if he were 6'1" instead of his original height.
I wish they had built him even bigger. Knowing that, I'm like, oh man, they should have made him like 6'6". Then he really would be larger than life.
Well,
and he's like average.
All you people, can't you see? Can't you see?
You know I'm a big BSB girl.
She got it. Yeah. But again, they're talking about the statue, which is Dreamers Point, which is part of World Celebration and Celebration Gardens. And then we go back over again to talk about Luminous a little bit more. You haven't seen it yet. My son and daughter haven't seen it yet either. And it's one of those things where it's like, this is the bulk of this, is them talking about Luminous. It's where they kind of open with the points of light, and then they talk about it, and they keep coming back and forth with the EPCOT theme and and Luminous. So it's very interesting, but it seems like maybe they should have just done a half-hour Luminous special instead of what they did here. I don't know. Again, I would have preferred them to talk about what happened to Cherry Tree Lane. What was it going to be, and why did we have to cut it?
They're never going to tell you that, Rob.
I want to know.
They're never going to tell you that.
Why isn't the play pavilion open? What's in there? They even on the map they have here, they even show it like kind of get bigger and smaller for a second when they were talking about World Discovery, and I was like, "Are you going to talk about that building?" Because they repainted the roof like 18 times. Exist. I know, because they put it behind a fence of shrubs, so it doesn't exist. I also love that this woman who is recording the song for Luminous looks like she's doing it from her apartment in New York, which she could have been doing. It could have been happening during COVID, or no, it wouldn't have been happening during COVID, because during COVID we still thought Harmonious was going to be the show.
That's true.
So yeah, I don't know. I
mean, she looks great.
Nice dress. a lot of talented people. And the music is good. I have an issue with Luminous in the song that overlays the two songs, When Somebody Loves You and Remember Me. They play it here. I have an issue with, I don't think it merges well together. Do you remember the TV show Glee?
I never watched it, but I know of it. I know what you're talking about.
They used to do mashups on there a lot, and that they didn't invent it, but they used to do mashups on there a lot. And it's like, wow, I'm surprised how well these songs go together. I personally, and y'all can at me in the chat, that's fine. I don't think that those songs go together. And so when they show that in here, I'm just like, no, thank you.
I love both of those songs, but the thing that took me out of it, I don't know, maybe this is just me, I don't know, but it was weird to me that they had Recuérdame sung by a woman and then the awful Jessie Toy Story song sung by a man.
Is that what it's called? The awful Jessie Toy Story song?
I don't like it. It makes me cry. I don't like listening to it because it makes me cry, but so does Remember Me. So I know that's what they're trying to do. They want to make me cry.
Here's that disclaimer again.
It took me out of it. It took me out of it because I'm like, wait, why are they doing that? Why don't they just have?
Yep. Well, buckle up. Here's another thing I don't like, is when they're like talking about World Showcase and the adjustments that they made there, and they're talking about when we were thinking about World Showcase, what did we think would be the best thing to do? Because it's World Showcase is art and storytelling is art, and so we decided to go back and think, well, what would Walt do? And let's go back to the drawing board. And Tom Fitzgerald called me and said, hey, I got this great idea. And, to your point again, does he like they throw Walt in, like, as if this
But
had something to
why?
do with Walt because he was
What
in,
did
in
this
the
have to?
war in Paris
He
or
had
in
to
France.
be in France. He was not a chef. As far as I know, he didn't have any rat companions living on top of his head. I don't know why they had to pull Walt into this. What did this have to do with Walt?
Why? I mean, he went there as a kid. No, that's Star Lord. Never mind. Um, but I mean, it made it seem like this was made. And again, this commercial may not be for me. That may be the problem. But I feel like you put it on Disney Plus, you're saying this is, I don't know. My point is, this was an attraction that they made for Disneyland Paris, and then they went, oh, we need to add something to Epcot. Let's shoehorn this into France, and that will help us add capacity to Epcot. Now,
They
I
did
like
not
this
mention
attraction.
at all. They did not
The
mention at all that this was built already and that this was not new for Epcot. They
no,
made it sound
no,
like they were thinking about Walt and they're like, let's do a France attraction because Walt was in France one time. So let's use Remy because that makes me think of Walt and it goes so well.
yeah.
Not that we already had this existing attraction and it would, you know, shoehorn into the France Pavilion easily.
Do you like Ratatouille, the Remy's
I
Ratatouille
do.
Adventure?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I do notice that they always show the refrigerator every time. Every time they show the interior, it's always the refrigerator.
Well, part of that could be it's in 3D, and if you show the other stuff, maybe that wouldn't fit. But you're right; it does make more sense because that's the cool practical feature inside. It's the thing you actually built, as opposed to showing the screens because it's all screen-based attraction. But they
They
make it
did
also
show
seem
some.
like they invented the trackless ride system for this too. Like, well,
Right.
we needed something special that would go blah blah blah. And again, I like the attraction. I it's one of the things I try to do more often when I go, just because I haven't ridden it as many times as say Frozen or anything else. There's your refrigerator. Um,
Every
but
time. They're going to show it
but
multiple times.
but I still am in awe sometimes of how well done some of the eye tracking things are done or whatever. But the thing that bothers me in this one, in this attraction, is that because it was made for France and because they made no changes to bring it here, it goes one line in French, one line in English, one line in French, one line in English, all the way through the thing. And so
I've
that
never
it's
noticed that.
you won't unnotice it now. Like, you can't not notice it next time you're in there. If you like, there's that part where you're around the corner and Gusteau says something in French, and then he says Chef Remy is waiting for you, and then he says something else in French. So it goes back and forth.
Interesting.
Um,
Goes back
yeah.
and forth just like this show because now we're going to go back to Guardians.
Yes, we're back at Guardians, which I love this ride too. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I don't love that, like, my wife loves Guardians. This is her, like, number one. I think maybe Chris Pratt may be on some secret list she has that she hasn't told me about. But she loves Guardians, and yet she can't ride this ride because she gets so motion sick. So she's done it once,
Oh,
and she was on, what is
what
the
song did she
medication?
get?
I'm afraid it was Conga, actually.
Oh, no
No,
wonder
no,
she
no.
didn't want to go back on it.
No, it was September because I had never had September before, and so I was very excited that had happened and that she was able to ride it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I love this attraction. I hate that it's still virtual queue, so years, I guess, at this point after it came out, but it's still very popular. I still stand by the fact that if they would make it not virtual queue, I don't think the wait would be terrifying, and I think that people would stop trying to get a virtual queue just cause. But I assume that Disney knows what they're doing. But they talk about how they went and they tested this thing out. And this could have been stock footage that they were like, hey, we want to talk a little bit about that Guardians thing. And we're doing this new special about Luminous. Do you have some footage of what you guys were doing when you were testing this? I think it's neat that they put all this together. I think it's an engineering marvel. But I feel like they should have, it should have been a little bit more easy for people so that it wouldn't make them queasy. But
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know. I want everybody to enjoy everything at Disney. I want kids to be able to ride
yeah.
things, and they make more and more attractions that have height requirements, as you know.
I
So
know very well. Oh, this was one of the things that my kids were like, "Oh, when do we get to ride that ride?" I'm like, you got to grow 8 more inches. You just hit that 40-inch mark to be able to get on Tower of Terror. You got 8 more inches to go before you can get on Guardians. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Well, and they said on this, this is the part where they were talking about the fact that they used the cars that they were using for testing as a way to move things, move pieces in through this tight building that they've built here. But yeah, I think a lot of people. I remember we were talking this past week on Park Center about Rivers of America and theming and things like that. And some people in the chat were just like, "Yeah, let's do something about that ugly Guardians building, and let's do something about the ugly Tron building."
Just put bushes and trees in front of it. I mean,
There's
honestly,
could be
I
some
don't.
pretty big trees, I think. So then they've jumped back to talking about Moana. There's your girl, uh, and it's Journey of Water. I always want to call it Moana, and they specifically don't call it Moana. This attraction, it's called the
The
Journey of Water,
journey.
inspired by Moana.
Yeah. I did think that some of this was really cool to look at how they were testing it and seeing how it worked with different heights and different motions that people were doing. Um, and I don't know
There,
why I didn't think of it like you get to play with water the way that Moana does. I,
well,
I, I should have put that together before.
and it's really neat to me that they, like you just said, like they go, okay, we come up with a concept and then we have to make a test version, whether it's the Guardians roller coaster that they built somewhere to see how that will actually be in real life, or this, bringing all your Imagineers out to test the water. This is where they're talking about the height. Like it has to work with the littlest kid and the tallest person, and it has the wave part. I thought was funny. She's like, you have to deal with people who wave like this, the
Yeah.
baby wave, she called it. Um, and so I think there's still some stuff in there that doesn't quite work the way I hoped it would. The one that's my favorite is the one you put your hand over and the water comes
Yes.
up to you. That's still my favorite because I feel like it always works. Here's
I mean, my kids like yeah, that the big arms up in the air wave coming.
yeah.
That's always a big crowd pleaser.
Like I said, that is one of my more favorite additions to New Epcot because of the vibe that it gives, the look that it has, and the interactivity. And they went out of their way to say, "Look, we're going to teach you something. We're going to teach you about the water cycle. You
Hmm.
don't have to read all this stuff. You could just go play in the water if you want to. But if you want to, there's a story here. There's a message here. There are also bathrooms. That's
I wish they had used the term edutainment.
you mean in talking about this special?
Yeah. Well, in
Yeah,
talking about Moana Journey of Water, I feel like it's obviously Guardians is not, Remy is not, but you have this. You have Moana Journey, the Journey of Water inspired by Moana
yeah. See,
actually
it's
is
hard.
edutainment.
It's hard to say. It's kind of like you were talking about. I'm going to call it Future World. I'm going to call it Moana. We're going to go see Moana. We're going to Moana Journey of Water. Then they go
Even
back
though
and they're
she's not
talking.
there, I should call it Tafiti. Let's go see
Yeah.
Tafiti.
Then they're back talking again about putting together Luminous. And while I'm kind of knocking the fact that 50% or more of this special is about Luminous, it is interesting to see all the things that go into it because
Right.
they put together something which I know you hated, which was enchantment.
Yep.
And they put it together, and you think these people worked months, maybe years, on the lighting and how does it hit and where does each music moment hit with each firework, with each projection, with melding the story together. And when it's finally done, you were like, well, that's not happily. Which, by the way, that's
You
because I
had
don't think
perfection.
happily.
Why would you mess with it?
Yes, I mean, I'm mocking it, and at the same time, I'm agreeing with you. Is that happily? When it was done, and I've said this story a million times. I was standing next to Tom Corliss, and he was like, "What a piece of garbage!" And I went, "That's not garbage. It's just not happily." Like that's the thing. It's
Right.
like it's a good show anywhere else in the world, but it's not happily
Well,
ever after.
Happily Ever After, I wanted to hate because I loved Wishes so much.
Wishes.
I went into Happily Ever After the first time thinking, this isn't going to be Wishes. I'm just here, because I'm a Disney person. I feel like I have to watch it at least once. And then I saw it and I cried, and it brought all the emotions out. And I was shocked that anything could beat Wishes for me. And when you have that kind of reaction, it's going to be very hard to top.
Yeah.
Enchantment had no chance.
It brought all of the emotions out: joy, anger, sadness, all of them,
All of them.
anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ennui.
Um,
No.
yep.
Enchantment brought out ennui and boredom.
Now we're again back talking about the points of light, and they make another great, I think, statement here is that this attraction, we'll call it, of the lights, has to look good whether you're standing underneath it or you're 2 football fields away at American Adventure. It has to look good everywhere, which
And
I
it does.
think it does. The only thing that's interesting to me is sometimes if I'm recording it, I can see the lights that are out, even though if I'm looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the lights that are out. So I think that's a neat, interesting effect that happens. But there are lights that are out. Seems to be a problem more often in that World Celebration Gardens area with the lights in the ground keep breaking and all that kind of stuff. But so they're
Now we're
back
back.
again talking about
Speaking of
Tafiti.
Tafiti,
Yeah, they're talking about Tafiti. They made good use of these models, by the way, because they had them at D23 and they showed them at EPCOT and I think a couple other places while it was all going down. But they were talking about that Tafiti could have been made of natural materials, and as she's
I,
about to say that, I was hoping she was about to say we were thinking about making Tafiti animatronic. That's what I wanted her to say, but she was like, we wanted
oh,
to make it organic. I was like, oh, but
but
then they
they
didn't.
didn't.
Yeah.
So why even say it?
Maybe just to make the point to say, hey, this is, it had to last and it had to look good all the
Yeah.
time. So, I mean, can you imagine like if like the gardener was off for a week and, couldn't get that one cued down, I guess. I don't know. Again, we're at one of these sections right here where where it would be a natural commercial break and they're talking about this disclaimer. And then they go back, surprise, to Luminous and they're talking about the music and they have the choir going and they were talking about how emotional this was with the choir and like that was their favorite part and bringing them in. Honestly, I love seeing these people because when I'm absorbed in a show like Luminous, I'm not really paying attention to anything other than like the visual and the now that I'm in. I don't think that there were
Right.
people in a recording studio working to create this, and some people that probably will never see Luminous that created Luminous. That's kind of odd too, right?
You think that? No, I'm pretty sure all of those people got to see it. I know for sure I saw at least the director at the end.
Yeah, I can imagine that, but I don't know. I don't know that they necessarily would
I
find
would
all these
like to
people because
believe that anyway.
most of these people are not going to be located in the greater Orlando area. So whether you're bringing them in from London, from New York, from LA, wherever. But yeah, maybe they went out of their way to do it. I mean, there are people every now and then it'll pop up like Gloria Stefan rides Cosmic Rewind, and here's her
Right.
own song, and it's like I don't think everybody does that. Maybe not. This is the part where they're talking about blending the songs together. And again, she has a beautiful
Yeah.
voice. It sounds amazing. I don't mind the dude's voice, but it just doesn't fit. Also, the woman singing "You'll Be in My Heart." They did some good music picks. I feel like for Luminous,
They
because
have
that was one of the things that people hated about about Harmonious,
yeah,
right?
they have beautiful voices. It just, when you're used to hearing it one way, it just kind of takes you out of it when you hear it a different way.
True. Yeah, that was one of the things that they didn't really fix, isn't it? Like when you
Right.
see like happily you may hear original songs or sung by the original people, but when we were seeing Harmonious, it was not only was it not the original people, but it was not in the language that we know, which was cool on the
I
one hand
mean,
that people would hear
yeah.
the songs in their own language,
I
but
don't I
also I
don't
think
mind
they
it
took people out of it.
being in a different language as long as it still feels like the character, if that makes sense. Like I I think Ricky Martin did the voice of Hercules when that came out. So like the character of Hercules, he would already sound like that. I don't know if I'm making sense, but like do it in a different language, but make it still sound like the character.
Gotcha. But you know that Ricky Martin wasn't in the movie Hercules, right? Just making sure.
I I thought he did the voice of Hercules in the movie. Am I? Did he not?
No,
Am I going crazy?
no, no. Tate
Not
Donovan
in the
did.
English version. Not in the English
Oh,
version. I'm talking in the Spanish version.
okay. I haven't seen the Spanish version then. Then he may have done that. Let's talk about this for a second. They're talking about the audio for this thing for um, for Luminous, and checking the audio and how it will sound, and like firing up the soundtrack for the first time. And I think that this is a very cool part too, because it's like all of the stuff they've planned for this thing they've done in studios, and now they're like, okay, we need to see it practical, and the people who built it come out and test it. And so I love that these people who are walking around with these devices trying to figure out, these sound engineers trying to figure out with these devices, if everything sounds right from every place, especially in a place
That is interesting.
like Epcot that's in the round. And he's talking about, reverberation against buildings, and that may sound a little bit different than a place where there aren't buildings, and it may sound a little bit different if there are fountains running, because they don't turn off the fountains that are
Right.
running there. So this they're going around and they're trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, is this speaker turned on? Maybe you need to run pink noise so that we can hear that. I love this attention to detail that I would have never thought about, because we get announcements
Mm-hmm.
through the blog all the time that it's like, hey, there's going to be fireworks testing at Epcot tonight, or there was fireworks testing last night, or whatever. This is why they do that, is that they
Right.
don't just see if the things will work. They have a whole team there to go, does it work with the music? Does it look the way it did on the computer?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just next level versus the fireworks that they shoot off at the baseball stadium. I mean, it really is very cool to see that. And then they show all these lights at Epcot, at
Yeah.
World Celebration, that don't always work. But anyway,
Aw.
there's your disclaimer again. Um, but the and again, at this point we are 6 minutes from the end of this, but they're going back again to talking about this with Walt, where, where they're putting him in, because we got to get it done for his birthday, because that's the new pretend date we've put together as his birthday.
Right.
And it's got two huge bolts coming out of his butt here, as you can see,
Oh, I
like,
never noticed that. I didn't notice that when I
yeah.
saw it the
So
first time.
there are
Now
two in
I'm
his
never gonna
feet.
be able to see
There
him
are two in
without
his feet
thinking
and
about that.
two in his butt, and then they had drilled holes in there, and then they drop him in, and now he's permanent.
Oh
But
my
they drill
gosh.
holes in this beautiful stone work that they had poured, and they drill holes into it, and I'm like, that would scare me to death after all the work you've done. Now this is the day of them opening up. Um, this was Walt's birthday, December 2023, opening up World Celebration Gardens for the very first time, including the statue of Walt. So that opened up The statue was there. World Celebration Gardens was mostly open because, again, at this point, we still didn't have Communicore Plaza or Communicore Hall open. There were still walls going that were up. They don't show that here. They don't say we weren't done. They make it seem like everything was this purposeful countdown
Everything
to
everything
Walt's
happened
birthday.
on Walt's birthday. Yeah.
Yep.
Guardians opened, Remy opened. All of this happened on Walt's birthday.
It was a huge day. It was beautiful. I feel like didn't so Remy opened up on on October 1st, which again we're talking about this right now because Epcot is celebrating its birthday. Epcot opened up October 1st, 1982. Disney World opened up on October 1st, 1971. So October 1st is a big deal. We're coming up to it as we're talking now. You may be watching this after. But so that's where this is lining up, is with the opening of Epcot, which would have made more sense for this to happen on Epcot's birthday, the same way that Remy did. Remy went through previews for everybody in the world. Did you go to a preview? I didn't get to go, but did you go to a preview? Okay.
Yes, I did.
So they did previews for everybody in the world, and because it was ready, but they didn't want to open it officially until Disney World's birthday on October 1st, 2021, which they did. And that's also when they brought in Enchantment, and that's when they brought in Harmonious, both shows that are gone. So, now they have this new date of December 5th, I think it is, 2023. Everything's got to be done by then, but it wasn't, because again, you still had walls up around Communicore Hall and Communicore Plaza until June of this year. So as everybody's watching this and seeing these beautiful faces, excited about finally getting to see Luminous in person and all that, that's a very Disney moment with the Tinkerbell wings. But then you see the woman, I think it's Sheila Melody something, who did the song there, and she's watching. And as I'm watching this, I'm trying to figure out where they're positioned, because I'm like, you wouldn't have put the singer of the song
downstairs
over by the bridge by Italy.
No, I was going to say I thought they were downstairs by France.
Oh, where they usually have the parties?
Yeah.
Like the dessert parties? That would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, wherever they're... I don't think so, because the ball...
Well, look where they are with the ball.
Point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that is...
I just was looking at it going, where are they standing? Because they would have them at the best spot, I would assume, because this is something that's meant to be enjoyed in the realm. But there are some places that are better. If you stand over by Morocco, by Spice Road Table, and you look across the water, that's a good spot to see, because you can see the Epcot globe, the spaceship Earth in the background. But this is the end where they're like, yep, Epcot will always be in a state of becoming, and everybody's excited, and it's this final crescendo with the fireworks at the end of the night, and talking about Remy and Moana and Guardians, but again, not talking about they're not talking about Harmonious. They're not talking about Cherry Tree Lane. They're not talking about Spaceship Earth being renovated. They're not talking about the Play Pavilion, any of those things that didn't come to fruition. Which I kind of hoped that they would, and it would have been refreshing to see. But like I said from the beginning, this felt like a commercial.
It absolutely felt like a commercial.
Yeah.
And not 100% genuine.
There's a weird part at the end where they, and I'm going to probably miss it, but they're all jamming, and I think it's when the credits start rolling here, so I may go back to it in a second, where they have like the ghost image of Walt talking about Epcot at the top, and I'm just
looking like it was being projected in the smoke from the fireworks. And because I had never seen these fireworks before, for a split second I was like, do they do that? But then no, of course they couldn't, because this is in the round. You would only be able to see that from one angle if they actually did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they made it look like that is actually happening. It's so weird.
Well, but again, I think it's because they want to tie it all together, because Epcot is the reason that Disney World exists is because of Epcot. watch that other thing on the History Channel. It's on Hulu right now. I think they keep threatening to take it off, but the play acting in between the recreations with the Walt and Roy, I think, are a little cheesy, but and it's
Not
almost a
Tom
little too on.
Hanks.
No, it's not Tom Hanks, and it's a little too on the nose, where it's like, he'll say something, you're like, that couldn't have really happened that way, but there was some of it, like he's walking through there's one on Disneyland, and they're walking through a warehouse trying to figure out something, and he looks up and he sees there's a mechanism that's moving boxes using the ceiling. He's like, that's how we'll do Peter Pan. And it's like, did that really happen that way? I don't know. Same thing. It's like,
I'm gonna
did
believe
Tom
it did.
Fitzgerald really wake up and call this guy and go, I've got this idea, this part in Ratatouille, I saw it and it's going to be an attraction? Or was
In
it like,
Epcot.
I don't know. Yeah, I look at all this, and like I said, I worked there. I worked there during the heyday when Figment was awesome, and you would listen to the land instead of live with it. And so I have a love of the original Epcot, but I understand things need to evolve. But I feel like they kind of lost track a little bit, especially with things like Communicore Hall.
Yeah.
Communicore Hall is just a sad, strange little building.
They did they even show it at all? They showed the outside of it, didn't they?
They
I feel like
showed
they
a
showed the
concept art
outside.
where they like a CAD rendering as they panned
Mm-hmm.
across and showed where Communicore Plaza and Communicore Hall were on that corner where the festival favorites booth is. So they showed that temporarily there, but they avoided the walls. Once they were talking about like it's open, they avoided showing the walls, and they also avoided showing actual Communicore Hall because it was filmed. This aired on Nat Geo in April, so you
Right.
assume it was done
It
at
was
least a month or two before that, and Communicore Hall did not open until June of this year. So
right.
I don't know. I like I said, I would love to see a behind the scenes look of everything that went down at Epcot from 2016 when they started thinking about let's reimagine this to 2024 when they opened up the last thing. Let's like who made the decision to get rid of Harmonious? How much did all that cost? And how did they just decide? You know what? Let's just trash this $1 million attraction that we've built, and after running it for just a year.
I mean, because they saw it.
But then how does it get to that stage? Like, how do you get that far in? Because as
I
they show
mean,
here,
they
they
did
work
show
on it.
here that they don't always know what it's going to look like until they've got all the pieces there. And once those barges were in, they didn't know what it was going to look like until those barges were in place.
Yeah.
Once those barges were in place, you couldn't get them out. So they really had no choice.
When I was at Disney World once during Harmonious's 1 year stint, I was there when they filmed a special that they aired on Disney Plus about Harmonious, and it was Adina Menzel was at Epcot, and she was doing like a hosting, and she was singing, and they did Harmonious, and it was this huge production. And I just remember trying to like look through the fake bushes and see what was going on while all that was going on. And that's not on Disney Plus anymore. That has been
Of course
that has
it's
been
not.
removed. It has been swept under
Scrubbed.
the rug. We don't know Harmonious. What is that? We don't know what that is. So
We will see Song of the South before we see Harmonious on Disney Plus.
okay. But I mean, there is the Disneyland Paris Illuminations special is on there. Again, there's some other behind the scenes ish things that you can catch if you go onto Disney Plus, and we've talked about some of them in the past. But I just really wanted us to talk about this one with Epcot's birthday on the horizon, and again, I can drink the Kool-Aid. I can look back and get excited that these people worked so hard. They pulled together Luminous. I love Moana Journey of Water, inspired by Moana. Guardians is one of my favorite attractions. So there's a lot of good that happened, but also a lot
They
of misses.
they have hyped me up. Now I'm like, oh, I need to see Luminous because I haven't seen it yet. Just because I haven't wanted to stay that late. The issue with having little kids is that they do not stay up for the fireworks, and if they are awake for the fireworks, then they're not in a good mood. So that's why I'm not usually there that long.
Okay, that's fair. I get it. But don't you go sometimes by yourself?
Sometimes I do have a trip coming up where I'm going to see Rosita, who's coming into town, and have a girls' night. So maybe we'll see it then.
Nice. Okay. All right. So I want to say thank you to Desi again for braving the weather and for talking about this with me. I want to give a shout out to our wigs, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. We're not seeing your little things. Are you
It's
sure
not
you're on the right camera?
working. No.
There.
Oh,
There's the bubbles. Oh, here. Let's do this. There we go.
yay.
We love our wigs, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. Thank you guys for being with us, for watching our shows. If you guys want, we have a ton of other reviews. Just go to deepintheplus.com anytime. It'll bring you right here to YouTube and our playlist for everything, including, as we've talked about, the things that Desi and I did because we couldn't do this, like Inside Out. I forget what the other one was. You know what we may have done? It may have been that we did the very first Acolyte episode 1, because we did two different
Oh,
things.
yeah.
We did a watch along for episode 1, and then you and me and Nick and I think Ron did
Wow.
a recap of the entire season. Speaking
I'm
of
still
which,
sad about that.
I know, I'm sorry. Speaking of which, you and I are going to do a recap of Agatha
Agatha.
in November. But coming up is we did EPCOT Becoming tonight. We've got Girl versus Monster with Patrick and myself coming up on October 2nd. Blackbeard's Ghost on October 9th with Ron. And then Desi will be back once again, hopefully not in a hurricane, to watch Edward Scissorhands. Okay. Yeah, Edward Scissorhands with the incomparable Johnny Depp.
Yes.
And it'll be great. All right, so before we go, and we've done a watch along here, so we wouldn't be recommending to the people here. But
Right.
if someone were to ask you about this special, Desi, would you recommend this special?
I think it would depend on who is asking me. If it's like my parents or some rando off the street who, like, kind of tangentially enjoys Disney, but it's not like a thing for them, probably not, if I'm being honest, because a lot of it was not real, was not accurate. The whole, like, we did all of this for Walt, and this is what Walt's vision was, when none of this was Walt's vision for Epcot. No, I wouldn't recommend it to like the casual person. If it's one of our Wigs members, somebody who is like super into Disney history and theme parks and wants to see more of the behind the scenes stuff, then I would say yes, I would recommend it to those people, but still with a grain of salt. Like, this is an advertisement. This is not really a documentary. So just go into it with that. So I think it would depend on the person, but for the casual Disney fan, I would probably say no.
Gotcha. Well, I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure that, like, there's a lot of other behind the scenes stuff. The very first thing I will recommend to anybody would be behind the attraction, because I feel like that's easily snackable content that people can watch for fun. And Paget Brewster does a great kind of like tongue-in-cheek narration of it. If you wanted to be more in depth, I would say the Imagineering story, but this is not the Epcot story. This is not the one. Like, this is how they've added some attractions. And it doesn't tell you what we lost to get those. It doesn't tell you what Communicore Hall had to replace. Like, how dare you stand where he stood? I mean, there's so many things like that where I'm looking at it and going, well, we don't know about the universe of energy. Why didn't they say, hey, we had the universe of energy, it turned into Ellen's, and then that went away and we made this? They didn't say that. They make it sound like these were just brand new concepts that they built. I like the history. I like the real stuff, but I also will buy into a commercial too. I will drink the Kool-Aid. So I'm glad I watched it. I had an entertaining time watching it. But in general, I think it's just, at the end of the day, it's just a commercial to get you to come and ride Guardians, play with the water, and see Luminous.
Right. And
But
Ratatouille.
yeah, and Ratatouille. It's so weird. It's so weird because
And the
like
Points of Light.
this is a 7-year project. I mean, Epcot 7-year project versus the 5 years or whatever they're spending at Epic, right? I don't know. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you guys always for watching Deep in the Plus, and we hope to see you next time. Also, don't forget, we'll be back again live this Sunday night at 9 p.m. for another Park Center, so we hope we'll see you then too. Otherwise, be kind to each other. Stay safe if you're in the storm, and have a great week. We'll see you next time.